She wasn't expecting to see him there. Not that night. Not like that. Not after everything they had been through. It was a quiet evening. One of those industry events that celebrities go to but rarely enjoy. She had arrived late, intentionally avoiding the cameras. She wore black, not because it was trendy, but because it helped her disappear. But the moment she stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat. There he was. Can Yaman. Standing across the room, surrounded by a few familiar faces, smiling. Laughing. Untouched. Unbothered. And just like that, the months she had spent healing, pretending, crumbled. She froze. The music, the voices, the flashes, they all blurred. All she could hear was the thumping in her chest. Her fingers went cold. Her knees weak. And for a second, Demet Özdemir forgot how to breathe. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. In every version, she was calm. In control. Indifferent. But reality was cruel. He hadn't seen her yet. Or maybe he had, and just chose not to react. That hurt more. Much more. She turned, pretending to look for someone. Anyone. She couldn't let him see her like this, not broken. Not breathless. But the truth is, no matter how far you run, some people live inside you forever. And Can? He was still in every part of her. She walked away from the crowd, gripping her clutch like it could hold her together. Each step felt heavier than the last. She needed air, not because the room was crowded, but because he was in it. She found a small hallway, quiet and dimly lit. Leaning against the wall, Demet closed her eyes and tried to steady her breath. But how do you calm a heart that never stopped racing for someone? They weren't supposed to see each other again. Not like this. It had been over a year. Enough time, people said, to move on. Enough distance, they believed, to forget. But love, real love, doesn't work like that. They had something that couldn't be erased by time or silence or even pride. Because when you've shared that kind of intimacy, when you've touched someone's soul, you don't just unfeel it. You bury it. And tonight, it was all resurfacing. She remembered the hotel room. The way he held her that night. His breath on her neck. The promises whispered between heartbeats. I'm scared too, he had said. But I don't want to lose you. And yet, he did. They both did. The breakup wasn't loud. There were no screaming fights, no cameras catching the aftermath. Just a slow, painful unraveling. Like watching the sun set on a day you weren't ready to let go of. They stopped calling. Stopped checking in. Stopped being them. And now? They were just two names that used to mean everything to each other. But tonight, seeing him again, all of that came rushing back. She wasn't ready. Not for the way he looked at her. Not for the way he didn't. He was still standing there when she walked back in. But now, he had noticed her. And their eyes finally met. Just for a second. But in that second, everything inside her broke loose. Because his eyes didn't say hello. They didn't say I'm sorry. They said, nothing. He didn't look away. Not immediately. Not like a stranger would. His eyes lingered, just long enough to remind her that they once meant something. Just long enough to hurt. Demet didn't know whether to cry or scream. Because in that moment, his silence spoke louder than any words ever could. She expected awkwardness. Maybe even a nod. A soft smile. But not that. Not emptiness. Not indifference. They had once been each other's everything. And now? They were just two people pretending they had nothing left to say. But her heart? It was screaming. Say something. Please. Just say something. But he didn't. He turned away. Just like that. And it shattered her. She sat down on a small velvet couch near the corner of the room, trying to look composed. But inside? She was unraveling. She stared at the glass in her hand, watching the way the lights bounced off the liquid. It reminded her of that night in Rome. The wine. The laughter. The kiss on her forehead. He had whispered, "This feels like home." And it had. It really had. So what changed? How did a love that once felt like forever become something so quiet? People around her were laughing, talking, sipping champagne. But she was frozen in that moment. In that memory. In that heartbreak. Because what hurts more than someone walking away is them acting like they never looked back. She blamed herself for months. Was she too cold? Too emotional? Too demanding? But no. She had loved him with everything she had. She just didn't know how to love herself while doing it. And he? He didn't know how to stay. Now, all she wanted was to disappear. To vanish before he could see just how much he still affected her. But deep down, a part of her wanted him to see it. To see that she still cared. To see that not all wounds heal quietly. And that some loves never leave, they just learn to hide. She should have known that night would come back to haunt her. But even now, even after all this time, it was still the one thing she couldn't talk about. The night she called him. It was late. She was alone in her apartment, lights off, candles flickering, wearing his hoodie, the gray one that still smelled like him, even months later. She had tried to be strong. She had told herself she wouldn't reach out. That she'd let him go, like he clearly wanted her to. But that night? She couldn't hold it in anymore. So she dialed his number. Hands shaking. Heart racing. Just once. Just to hear his voice. Just to say something, anything, before it was too late. And he didn't answer. She waited. Maybe he was asleep. Maybe he didn't see it. She told herself all the excuses she could think of. She kept staring at the screen, waiting for it to light up. Waiting for his name to appear. But it never did. He never called back. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. And that's when she knew. Not because he said it. Not because of some big, dramatic fight. But because of the silence. Silence was his goodbye. And that one missed call? It became the loudest memory of her life. Tonight, sitting there across the room from him, all of that pain came flooding back. She wanted to scream, "Why didn't you pick up? Didn't you know how much I needed you? Was I that easy to forget?" But he just stood there. Talking to someone. Smiling. Unaware, or maybe pretending, that she had ever needed him at all. Sometimes it's not the heartbreak that destroys you. It's the unanswered questions. The messages that stay in your phone. The calls that go ignored. And worst of all, the feeling that you weren't even worth a response. That night broke something inside her. Not because she lost him, but because she lost the version of herself that still believed in them. She told herself she had moved on. That her life was full. That she didn't need closure. But seeing him again? It proved everything she tried to bury was still alive. Because how do you forget the way someone made you feel safe? How do you erase the smell of their skin, or the sound of their laugh in the middle of the night? She had tried. God knows, she had tried. But love, the kind they had, doesn't ask for permission to stay. It just stays. Even when it's silent. Even when it's painful. Even when it's over. She looked at him one last time before standing up to leave. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and still chose not to follow. That was always the problem. She wanted him to fight for her. But he never did. And tonight, like so many times before, he let her walk away. Outside, the night was cold. The air hit her skin like a slap, but it felt real. More real than anything inside that building. She pulled her coat tight and took a deep breath. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself feel everything. The love. The anger. The heartbreak. The longing. All of it. Because sometimes, healing doesn't mean forgetting. Sometimes, it means remembering, and surviving it. She wasn't the same girl who made that call. She wasn't the same woman who cried into her pillow, waiting for a message that never came. She was stronger now. More grounded. But still, a part of her would always love him. Not in a desperate, unfinished way, but in the quiet corners of her soul where old songs still play, and memories still smell like his cologne. She didn't need him to come back. She didn't need a dramatic apology. She just needed to breathe again, on her own. And as she walked into the night, the wind whispering against her skin like a promise, she did.